Hey guys, it's Pete here with the River Kings. Today I'm going to talk about boat designs. What is a good boat for you? What may not be a good boat for you? There's a lot that goes into this. I'm going to try to stay kind of on a surface level on this. I don't want to go too deep into the weeds, but I'm going to cover some main points about a boat and why you may or may not like it. One of the points I want to cover is stability. Another one is speed. And another one is maneuverability. And these things are important to kayakers no matter what they're doing, one way or the other. So let's start with stability. We get a lot of people saying, is it a stable kayak? Does it feel stable? And the key word is feel. It feels stable is a good thing to a lot of people. If you're the kind of person who wants to go out and have no excitement and just want to be sure that there's no chance of tipping over, then you need a very heavy and wide boat. Sit-on tops are great for this a lot of times, depending on some other design features. But the wider the boat it is, the more stable it usually is. Another design that can add to stability is how the hull is shaped. And most of these sit-on tops are flat hull or pontoon hull, where the two outsides are deeper than the inside or the center of the kayak. Contrast that with a V-hull boat, a V running down the length of the boat, two sides like this. That'll feel a little tippier. Keyword is feel. And believe me, if you're not used to kayaking and you feel tippy, it's a tippy kayak. I tell my friends I like to call it responsive, not tippy. It's responsive. And here's what I mean. All the things that make a kayak feel stable on flat water make it unstable in current, i.e. the hull. If you look at this boat, and I'm going to compare this boat to my son's touring boat because they're so different. It'll be easy to see the differences. This is a very soft chine boat. In other words, there's no corners. There's one here that's kind of the only chine. There's a soft chine right there. You probably can only feel it. You may be able to see a little bit. And then it's just round. It's round all over. You know, a lot of rocker. Rocker is how much does the bottom of the boat look like the rocking chair rocker. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But this boat's stable, but this boat's very round. It's not a V, it's not flat, it's not pontoon, it's a round hull. So there's some of those different designs. Another design aspect that you want to look at for stability is rocker. Now, if you don't have a super wide boat like some of these fishing kayaks, if you have some rocker, it'll feel stable most often because the bottom of the kayak or the center of the kayak is lower than the two ends, so it kind of nestles into place. Sort of like a hammock hung between two trees. When you get down in a low slung hammock, it's not going anywhere. But if you string it really tight, it may want to flip and tip, you know, because it's just kind of on edge. So rocker is how much of the bottom of your boat looks like a rocking chair. If there's zero rocker, maybe a little tippy, unless it's a super wide flat hull boat. Those are not fast, and they're usually not very maneuverable, but they are very stable. Speed is another aspect you might want to look at. How fast is this boat going to be? Are you covering a lot of ground all day? Or are you fishing where covering ground really isn't that important? Maybe you need to get out to where you're going, but then you just want to go slow anyway. Wide is going to be good, short be good. If you want to go fast all day with the least amount of effort, you need a very thin boat or narrow. That's the beam. How wide is it? A narrow beam with as much length as you can. Now when you add length, you're adding speed, but you're not adding maneuverability. For maneuverability, you get to go back to short. So what do you want? Do you want a fast boat, a maneuverable boat, or do you want it to feel stable or be stable for standing or one of those kind of things in flat water? Three different things you got to kind of marry together, and all the design aspects of a boat kind of go into that. So speed, maneuverability, stability. Now let's look at this boat. This is my Whitewater boat. It's a Liquid Logic Hefe. It's called a creek boat. If you're not familiar with whitewater boats, these are the boats you go over waterfalls and do all the crazy stuff in. And I do that with this boat, and it's a very good one. I'm going to put that up against my son's touring boat because they're so different in boat designs. It's going to be easy for you to see the differences in that. So we'll start with the rocker of this boat. I guess you can see just how curved that really is. It's just a very curved boat. If I set it on the ground, it would rock back and forth. The hull itself is round everywhere, no corners. The reason for this is that corners grab water and current. So if water is pushing on the boat from the camera to me, the natural thing this boat's going to want to do, all boats, is roll. As the water hits it, it's going to want to go that way. And you've probably experienced this before while in a river. By having a smooth hull with no corners and things like that, it allows the water to pass freely underneath. By not having any sort of keel whatsoever, it is completely loose on the water, much like paddling a disc sled in the snow versus a long, slender sled, if that makes sense to you. This boat is also very short. That means it can turn on a dime, which is important when you're whitewater kayaking. There are shorter boats for doing different things, but this is a good all-around, getting in some big water, going over waterfalls, class 4, class 5, class 1 or 2 if you're wanting to learn. There's nothing this boat can't do. There are shorter boats that aren't the best for waterfalls and things like that. This one can do it all for whitewater. Liquid Logic Hefe, very robust plastic. They have grab loops, very robust. These are for extraction in pin situations and raising, lowering your boats into gorges while rappelling. These guys will get crazy out there and trying to get to places that most people don't want to go. Whitewater kayakers, they need these features on the boat. You may not need that on your boat, but that's what it is. Another thing is, look how stiff that plastic is. Whenever you're looking at a boat, take the cockpit rim, which is this right here, and fold the plastic, see if it'll move. Does that move? Then the plastic may not be good. This is obviously very robust plastic, some of the best out there. Nothing to worry about here. Some of the stores that sell kayaks, like the big chain stores, don't sell the best boats or the best brands, and they don't use the best plastic. They're more affordable, so it's a consideration. The best boat is the one you can get on the water with. But if you want to see what makes a boat a good boat, plastic, what it's made out of, makes it a good boat. I'm not talking about fiberglass today, because if you're looking for a fiberglass boat, you're probably not going to watch this video anyway. The outfitting in this boat is very whitewater, a very low back. It's got these thigh braces. You can't see them there. It's got a bulkhead. Doesn't have foot pegs. It's got a bulkhead, so there's a stable platform for your feet. And you're locked in this boat when you're in it. Very uncomfortable for sitting in it for 12 hours, 10 hours. You're talking about 2 hours, you're ready to get out and get a little break. But this is what you need to stay in the boat in whitewater. Now compare that whitewater boat with this boat. This is my son's touring boat. He's 8 years old. It's a Tsunami SP, small person, made by Wilderness Systems. Phenomenal boat for a little kid. There's some other little kid boats out there. I say little kid. There may be some big kids out there that enjoy this because they're small as well. There's no knock on them, but this is a great boat for a small person. And let me show you the differences right away on the hull, which is the most important part of the boat. As you can see, it's got a keel line. I guess you can see if I tilt it, you can probably see the reflections. It's got a keel line, a chine right here, a chine line there. This is the keel. Now those chines are corners that add primary stability. And what I mean by that is, how stable does a kayak feel when sitting flat in the water? You just get in the water and you're sitting there, it feels like it's locked in place. That's primary stability, and this one is very good. That's what those chines do. Now let me contrast that with current. Again, moving from the camera to me, it's going to hit those corners and the keel and more readily flip this boat. Let me explain the keel. The keel is this pronounced corner on the bottom of the boat that runs from the bow to the stern. Some boats have a very pronounced, some boats don't have any, like this whitewater boat, but that allows it to go very straight without tracking to the side. It tracks in a straight line, making long, flat water travel much easier. Unfortunately, if you have a keel and you enter a lot of heavy currents, side currents, things going everywhere, that's going to be acting on your boat in ways you might not wish it would. You get into some current, you get sideways, you're kind of at the mercy of that keel, and you're going to have to do a lot of correcting to get it back. my boat for expeditions is a Prion Yukon Expedition. I've got it in my other videos. It's got a trihedral hull, so it's got 3 sides. It's not a V, it's not round, it's its own thing. Not a whole lot of rocker, so you get a good long water length, but since there's no keel, it's still very maneuverable. This boat is kind of like a 14.5 foot whitewater boat that does have the rudder attachment as well, so it goes very straight when you want to. It is very maneuverable when you want it to be very maneuverable. Kind of a good all-around boat. I haven't found another one I like better for doing moving water expeditions, i.e. rivers. Source to sea, starting up when it's very small, then class 1, all the way through class 3, and sometimes a small class 4, big water 4. It can handle all that. When you get to flat water, just flat water, it can do it. It's just going to be a little slower than you're going to want it to be if that's all you're doing. Another consideration. This boat has a rudder. About that, all you got to do is pull the lines and deploy that thing. My son can do it. He's got foot pegs in there. You move it. You steer that rudder. Can steer the boat. He doesn't need the rudder to go straight. A lot of people say you don't need a rudder. If you're out in the water all day, get a rudder. On a long trip, it makes everything so much easier. You just don't even have to think about it. If you're fishing, get a rudder. You pop the rudder. You got a fish on. You don't have to grab that paddle to try to straighten out. You just kind of turn your rudder. It's much better. Now this boat does not have much rocker, which adds a lot of length and speed in the water line. That makes it faster, makes it a little less maneuverable. The keel makes it less maneuverable. My son's very light. We usually don't load this one too much even when camping, so he can get it around as he needs it. If we go into a whitewater situation or a situation requiring more maneuverability, this would not be the boat I put my son in. This is more for class 1, an occasional class 2 perhaps river, with a lot of time in between features to kind of straighten out and get where you need to be. If there's a lot of work to be done on a river, this is not the boat you're going to want to have. Now let's talk about speed. There's 2 components that make speed in a kayak. 1, 2, just kidding. It's length and width of the boat. That's it. There's some other small things that can add minuscule little differences, speed or loss of speed. But basically, how long is your boat and how wide is your boat? And there is a very complicated equation on this that some very smart people have come up with. And I read through it and tried to understand it, and what I got out of it is the more narrow and the longer your boat is, the faster it is, period. Now, when you make a boat more narrow, you make it less stable feeling or more responsive. Again, if you're in whitewater, being able to lean and edge your boat a lot to get the boat to do different things. If you're sea kayaking as well and you're surfing waves or you're in some weird water, having a very responsive boat is a good thing. So you don't want an unstable boat, but in some situations, you may want a very responsive boat. Now this boat being narrow like this is not bad because my son's so small, it doesn't feel tippy to him. It's proportioned for a kid that big. So just know as you get narrower with your boat, you get tippier feeling. And then if you have a V, a V hull, much like this one, with some hard chines to add it out. But if it's a straight V hull with soft chines, it's going to be even more tippy. If you take all the rocker out of it, it's going to be even more tippy. But what that's going to do is make it even straighter paddling and much faster. Now the length of the entire boat doesn't matter as much as the length of the boat at the water line. So if you have a lot of rocker on any kind of boat, you got the ends of your boat out of the water and the middle of it is. So if you have, let's say you have an 18-foot boat, but you got a lot of rocker because it's a very playful sea kayak, 2 feet of your boat on that end and 2 feet of your boat on that end are not in the water. My boat's 14.5 feet, my Prion. It has very little rocker in that regard, so the nose and the stern are in the water, and that's what gives it the speed it has. That 18-footer with 2 feet out there becomes a 14-foot boat in the water. Now those other 2 feet do things like help you get through waves and some other things, but just know a lot of rocker takes the speed back down. Is it getting confusing yet? Some other things to think about when buying a boat is the outfitting. How comfortable is the seat? The best boat is the boat you can stay comfortable in all day long, enjoying what you're doing kayaking. Now, I've gone on trips where I had much faster boats than I had much more comfortable boats, and that's usually the trade-off. I usually stick with the more comfortable boat because I'm in some current and speed is not the only factor. Now, if I had to get out and do some incredibly long flat water track where there's no river current, there's nothing, I just need speed, I will take the longer, more uncomfortable boat and outfit it myself, make a custom seat to make it work for me. Because believe me, when you're on a river that's flat, or if you're on flat water, a lake, any of those situations, and all you're doing is paddling all day to get from where you're going, point A to point B, the only thing on your mind at the end of that day is that you wish you had a faster boat. It's not a good feeling. If you have a slow boat, you're going to know it at the end of the day. If you've been on a trip and you're like, oh, you just feel the boat working against you, that's bad. You don't want that. So what you're kind of trying to do is find kind of this harmony between the speed you need, which is the length, the maneuverability you need, which is the lack of length, and the stability you need, which may be very wide or may be very narrow, depending on what kind of water you're getting into. I recommend for all the people that go with me, somewhere between a 14 and 15 foot boat, because that allows you, regardless of size, it allows you a comparable speed to all the other boats in the group. You don't want one guy with a 10-foot boat, very fat boat, 10 feet, terrible features for speed, married up to with a guy with an 18-foot boat. That's just going to be a long weekend for both of them. One guy's going to be paddling 2 strokes and waiting 5 minutes, and the other guy's going to be killing himself trying to keep up with the guy who's not even paddling. We all go with about 14-foot boats. It's enough speed, it's enough maneuverability. Get a little rocker on there. It'll be able to let you turn, not too much. You don't want to go back to a 12-foot, 13-foot boat. Just think about all those things when you're looking at your boat. So I kind of lightly touched on all these things, and I hope I explained at least some of them well. If I did not explain it well, at least I hope you're confused on a deeper level. Thanks for watching.